Welcome to all the students once again. In the previous lecture, we have started the elements of soft skill. In that, we have completed the first element, that is grooming manners and etiquettes. Today, we will see the second element of soft skill, that is effective listening and speaking. This lecture I have divided in two parts, part 1 and part 2, because this subtopic of the elements of soft skill is a very vast one. So in this, we will first see the effective listening. Okay, now let us start with the meaning and definition of listening. See, communication is a two-way process. That is, it consists of sending a message and receiving a message. In oral communication, the speaker is the sender and the listener is the receiver. In oral and written communication, there is no communication unless the message has been received. So, this lecture will stress upon the importance of the receiving process in oral communication because listening skills are equally important as speaking skills. Yes, communication is a two process. There is a sender and one is the receiver. The whole process is over when the receiver has received the message. If you see in oral communication, the sender says something and the listener listens it. And if he or she does not listen it properly, then the process can become one of the failure process. So listening is also very important as much as your speaking skills are important. Now let us move on to the definition of the listening. See, listening is a conscious, positive act requiring willpower. It is not a simple passive exposure to sound. This particular definition is given by K. Davis. Now let us see the second definition. Listening is an activity that can be turned on and off consciously or unconsciously. It starts with the receivers becoming aware that he or she should listen to and become attentive towards what is being said. This particular definition is given by Leland Brown. This definition shows the reality that listening depends on the particular person who is listening. If that particular person is not if he is not willing to listen it, then he will not listen it. If he is willing to listen it, then he will listen it carefully. So it basically depends on us whether we want to listen it carefully or not. If we listen the message carefully, then it will be a good one. If we does not listen the message carefully, then the whole process can become a failure one. So listening is also a very important activity in the whole process of business communication or in the whole process of communication. Now let us see the difference between our hearing versus listening. There is a little difference between hearing versus listening, but people might get confused that what is that difference between hearing and listening. See, active listening means giving non-verbal and sometimes verbal feedback to the speaker. Listening requires one to concentrate and participate in the conversation. Hearing refers to the awareness of the sound of another person talking without really processing what is being said. Okay? Hearing depends upon the ears, but listening uses the mind as well as and may sometimes even require the eyes. The ears permit one to hear sounds and the mind enables the interpretation of these sounds to recognize some of them as words and to fashion the words into thoughts or ideas. With one mind or with one's mind, one is able to determine that an oral message is important. One interprets the message and reacts to it. So that is listening. In listening, we are interpreting. We are using our mind. We are using our intellectual ability. But hearing depends on ears. Whether we want to hear whether the person is saying what the particular person is saying or what does he not saying, we does not pay heed to it. Just we are hearing it. We are using our ear only. But in this, we use our mind as well as eyes also sometimes. So this is what is the difference between hearing and listening. Okay. Now next comes the listening process. So let us see the listening process. The listening process first step is receiving. See, physically hearing the message and taking note of it, it is receiving. Physical reception can be blocked by noise, impaired hearing or inattention. Okay? The next comes in the process is interpreting. Assigning meaning to sounds according to one's values, beliefs, ideas, expectations, needs, etc. means interpreting. Okay, the speaker's frame of reference may be quite different from the listener's. So the listener may have to determine what the speaker really means. So this is your second step. The third step in the process comes remembering. Storing a message for future reference is we call as remembering. As one listens, one retains what one has heard by taking notes or by making a mental outline of the speaker's key points. The next step in the process is evaluating. Applying critical thinking skills to weigh the speaker's remarks is evaluating what is being said. One separates fact from opinion and evaluates the quality of the evidence. And the last step in the process is responding. Reacting once the speaker's message is evaluated is known as responding. If the communication is one-on-one or in a small group, the initial response generally takes the form of a verbal feedback. If there are many people in an audience, then one initial response may take the form of an applause, laughter, or silence. Later on, one may act on what one has heard. So this is the process of listening. First one is receiving, second one is interpreting, then third remembering, fourth evaluating, and fifth responding. One first receives, then interprets what he has received, then he remembers it, and then he evaluates which information is true, which information is important, and accordingly he responds to that listening. This is your listening process. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now next comes importance of listening. Why there is importance of listening? Why we should listen it very carefully. So let us see the first one. Listening helps to make good policies. See, if one listens to one's subordinates carefully, one will know which policies are suitable for the organization. One will not keep stumbling from one top-heavy policy to another. One will chalk out the policies which are acceptable to other members and which will win their willing support. So in this way, listening is very important in forming a good or a better policy in the organization. Next comes important for the success of the open door policy. See, many managers take pride in the fact that they believe in the open door policy. Here, open door policy means they always keep their door open for their employees to walk into their room and talk to them freely. No doubt their door is always open, but what is not good for the policy is that they are themselves bad listeners. So, their employees are inhibited to talk freely. The result is a total failure of upward communication. But if one as a manager listens sympathetically, then one's employees will be encouraged to talk and there will be free upward communication. So, in this point of view, it is very important to listen it carefully by the manager's side, by the superior side. To listen carefully the information which is being sent by the juniors or the subordinates. Next point comes, listening helps to know the organization. Listening, especially careful listening to the grapevine, will enable one to know what the members of the staff think of the company's policies and activities or the rules. Hence, it will help one understand one's organization better. So in this way, it helps the organization to know better. Next comes, it helps to spot sensitive areas before they become dangerous. See, in an engineering firm, the management decided to meet the workers' union regularly, whether or not there were any problems to sort out. The result was that they began to listen to each other well for the first time. They were able to spot sensitive areas and find out the solutions before they become explosive, and many other problems that could have led to serious disputes just did not rise. So in this way, listening helps in finding those sensitive areas and to eradicate those areas so that there is no delay in the work in the organization. Next comes, listening limits the complaining of employees. Very often employees have certain grievances which exist more in their mind than in reality. That is, which are primarily psychological. If one listens to them patiently and sympathetically, their anger will subside and they will be mollified. So in this way, the complaining of the employees can also be removed with the careful listening. One should be sympathy towards what a particular worker or particular subordinate is saying. So in this way, listening limits the complaining of employees. Okay. Now let us move on to the obstacles or the barriers to listening. So there are various barriers or the obstacles in the listening. We will see it one by one. First comes wandering attention. See, wandering attention is one of the most difficult barriers to overcome. The mind has excess time while the speaker speaks and is likely to wander off if the listener is not watchful. A listener should avoid premature conclusions or the letting his or her mind to wander while the another person or the other person is talking. Only self-discipline can keep the mind attentive and usually occupied in reviewing the talk and connecting the various ideas that are put across by the speaker. Wandering attention means when you are not paying the attention of the person who is speaking and you are seeing here and there or you are thinking about something else. So this is what the wandering attention means, and this is the one of the most difficult barrier to the listening. Next comes temptation. The temptation to avoid what is difficult is perhaps the greatest barrier to listening. Those who avoid discussion programs on the radio and the TV are already on the path of mental decay. So a little daily effort to follow a discussion on a radio or a TV is useful for improving the listening ability. One should not be so much of temptation. There should be very less temptation. One should have a proper command over its temptation, so that the particular person can stand or can sit for a second or for a minute to listen to another person carefully. We are like that. We doesn't want to listen to another person. We see here and there, or we are busy in doing something else. So this is what temptation means. And if one want to improve its listening skill, then one should follow a discussion on TV or a radio, and that will help a lot in improving the listening ability of a particular person. Okay. Next comes distraction. See, distracting noise from outside cannot always be avoided, but the listener can seek the speaker's cooperation in overcoming this problem. Disturbance by other people or by the telephone must be prevented, and an executive must ensure that others will not walk into the room or that a telephone call will not be put through to him during an interview or a meeting in his room. Okay, this is what distraction is. Lack of interest. See, lack of interest is an inexcusable fault in the listener. Rejecting the speaker or the subject as a dull or boring is something that a responsible person should not do. Very often, uninteresting speakers communicate useful information and ideas, while entertaining speakers may have little useful matter. So one should put an interest when someone is speaking. Then only one can listen it carefully. So this is the one of the barrier of the listening. Next comes filters. So what does filters here means? See, there are the various internal lenses an individual has, and through which he or she filters and interprets everything he or she sees and hears. Some common human filters are beliefs, values, attitudes, personality, culture, interest, expectations, assumptions, memories, images, past and future, and past experiences. So basically, people on the basis of their beliefs, values, attitudes, their past experiences judge other people, or judge their thinking, or judge their speaking. So that is what filter here means. You have a certain barrier in your mind only, that you think about something is like that only. And this obstructs the communication process. So this is what a filter here means. The next barrier is criticism. The tendency to criticize the speaker's manner, appearance, voice, etc. is another cause for poor listening. No doubt, style adds to the effectiveness of speech, but the content is always more important than the style. There are many worthy persons who do not cultivate style, but have good matter to give. And by paying too much attention to the speaker's style, the listener is likely to lose that matter. So this is what criticism here means. Emotional blocks. Emotional blocks, popularly known as deaf spots. What they are known as deaf spots. Prevent a person from taking in and retaining certain ideas. There are people who cannot listen to figures, to politics, or to descriptions of surgical operations. It is possible that the use of some word or phrase by the speaker may cause an emotional disturbance to the listener and eventually lead to poor listening. It is therefore important to guard against getting upset by words which may have been used quite innocently by the speaker. So this is what emotional block. This is how the emotional block acts as a barrier to a listening. Next come habits. There are many internal habits that prevent us from effective listening. For example, not hearing things out but jumping in before the person is finished. The mind wandering to things that are more relevant or interesting to you. Or turning off if the speaker's voice, manner, or physical appearance is unpleasant. Or in your mind adding to or taking away from the speaker's words, hearing what you want to hear. Or judging the speaker and not giving him a chance to change your mind. Or trying to do other things while you listen, that is multitasking, or not valuing a conversation that you did not initiate. So, etc. These are the habits which create a barrier to listening. Next point is taking notes. Trying to take down extensive notes is a sure way of missing points. However, fast the listener may write, he cannot rise as fast as the words are spoken unless he writes shorthand very well. Taking notes is an art and should be cultivated. Note taking should be limited to writing down the general ideas. Lecture notes can never be in final form and they have to be revised and expanded after the lecture. Trying to write down too many detailed notes of the speech leads to poor listening. Take the example of college only. If the teacher is giving the lecture and you are continuously writing, that means what? You are not paying attention to what the person or what the teacher is saying, but you are just busy in writing. So this is also creates a barrier in the listening. What things are important or what points are important, that should be noted. But if you're continuously writing everything, then it creates a barrier in the listening. Okay, so this is the taking notes. Next is distraction in one's own mind. This distraction comes in your own mind. See, distraction in the listener's own mind are the greatest barriers to listening and must be firmly checked. If the mind is allowed to go on a joyride thinking of the next vacation or last week's party, there will be no listening. However, serious personal worries are very difficult to put aside. If there is any cause for worry, it is better, if possible, to postpone or delegate the listening responsibility for the time being. Similarly, physical unfitness like a headache, for example, may reduce listening efficiency, and it is better not to attend a conference or a meeting when there is a headache or some other physical pain. So this physical pain or your mind wandering or thinking about something else also causes distraction or also causes barrier to listening process. Okay? Now next comes not paying attention to non-verbal communication. See, this is the point. Not paying attention to non-verbal communication means what? That much of an individual's communication is delivered non-verbally. That is through body gestures or through postures or through eye contact. So this is what non-verbal communication means. So much of an individual's communication is delivered what? Non-verbally. Even when an individual is not talking, he or she is still communicating in some manner. So here are the three main ways that a communication takes place, along with their relative impacts. First, it takes place through words, then vocal, that is tone of the voice, and your body language, which comprises of your facial expressions, posture, gestures, eye contact. Okay. Now next comes external distractions. In addition to all the internal distraction mentioned above by me in the previous slide, There are also many significant external distractions that affect our ability to listen effectively. For example, barriers such as desk or physical distance between speaker and listener, the accent of the speaker, personal problems. Someone who is consumed with his own personal issues will not have much energy left to actively listening to another. Interruptions such as phone calls, distractions such as noise, other people, activities, animals, traffic, machinery, views of outside scenery, etc. Or time pressure such as deadlines. For effective listening to be possible, such distractions need to be minimized. Then only these obstacles can be overcome. So these were the various points or the barriers to the effective listening. I hope you have enjoyed this session. Till then, thank you. And in the next lecture, we will meet with the another element of the soft skill. Thank you once again.